So, okay, then what is the field? I don't think we know. And I think that's the crux of the crisis. In other words, I believe that what we're having is an identity crisis. So I've been thinking about this and wondering if there might not be some other way to look at the field, one that gives it a broader scope and a more promising future. And I've come to the conclusion that I think we need to re-examine the fundamentals of who we are. We should even be willing to go as far as to consider changing the name of the conference, if that's what it takes. So here's my suggestion. I think we should say the field is no longer just computer graphics. Instead, it's computer graphics and interactive techniques. Well, it turns out that this is exactly how people thought of the field 36 years ago when they started SIGGRAPH, and so you can relax, this actually already is our name. Here it is in the proceedings of the first SIGGRAPH back in 1974. Here it is in the logo of this year's conference, and it's even in our bylaws and our mission. But even though interactive techniques has always officially been part of our name, you'd hardly know it of late. It hasn't gone away completely, but it has certainly taken a back seat. In the beginning, interactive techniques were inseparable from computer graphics. And then in the mid-70s, a number of technologies came together and opened up the possibility of rich, realistic imagery, and we fell in love. And who could blame us? We had a grand challenge, creating animated virtual worlds indistinguishable from reality. And from that base, we could create any image we could imagine. And I can certainly relate to this since I was smitten with rendering, and I made it the focus of my own career. But these new images were not exactly interactive. It could take hours to compute a single image. And remember, we said that earlier that an hour per frame is 100,000 times slower than interactive. And so we started to let the interactive techniques part of our field drift away. And that was understandable because our new rendering and animation love was so exciting. But since then, computation has got about 100,000 times faster. And recently, it's gotten fast enough that rendering is becoming interactive. So I believe it's now time to re-embrace the interactive techniques part of our heritage. So why interactive techniques, you might ask? Why make such a big deal of them? Why are they the answer? Well, to answer that, I think we need to start with a look at the bigger picture of technology today. Alvin Toffler identified three big revolutions in history. The agrarian revolution about 10,000 years ago that led to agriculture, domesticated animals. The Industrial Revolution about 200 years ago, and the current revolution in technology, which is leading to what he called the information age. I believe Toffler was right. The current technology revolution is that significant. It's already changing almost every aspect of our lives. And as machines become more powerful, the new features they have and the massive information they produce could easily become ever more overwhelming. How are we going to be able to find our way through that vast sea of information and make use of all those new features? We will need to have ever more effective ways to interact with it all. So interactive techniques have a central role to play in this revolution. This is not a universally held view. There are those who believe we are approaching what Werner Ving called the singularity, when machines will become conscious. They will become capable of human intelligence and will even surpass it. Ray Kurzweil predicts this will happen in 2045, which by a bizarre coincidence is 36 years from now. From this viewpoint, machines will soon be awake and think on their own. And as a consequence, from that view, interaction is of secondary importance. Well, I disagree. I don't believe in the coming of the singularity, or as some detractors call it, the rapture of the nerds. And in saying this, I don't think I am underestimating machine capabilities. I think believers in the singularity are underestimating human capabilities. I was wandering around the Met in New York recently and came across this Picasso painting, and I was struck cataleptic with awe. Here is Picasso in a bar he used to go to with his close friend Carlos, but Carlos is not with him today because he just committed suicide because of his unrequited love for Germaine, the woman at the bar. And the devastated look on Picasso's face, while going through the motions of routine life, putting on the appearance of a comic harlequin, well, I find the look on his face absolutely haunting. Remember, believers in the singularity think that machines will be able to create this level of art on their own. This is different from artists using technology as a tool. And remember that even algorithmic art still has an artist. They're just using the algorithm as their brush. So tell me, how do you build a machine that can create a painting this powerful? Or write a story so gripping that people stay up all night reading it? Or create a philosophy that 2,000 years later still gives people unexpected insights into life? Or write and perform a piece of music that transforms you? Or pose new and meaningful scientific questions on its own? Or direct a film that moves you to tears or makes you convulse with laughter? I'm not claiming that any of this is inherently impossible. I'm too much of a scientist to say that. And they've made some progress. But there's no evidence I can see of any progress that shows me we have a clue how to build machines like this. And without evidence, we're not in the realm of science, we're in the realm of science fiction. Hubert Dreyfus, in his book, What Computers Still Can't Do, looked at this and said that claiming that their progress so far means we're well on the way to the singularity is kind of like the first caveman ever to climb a tree claiming he's well on the way to getting to the moon. So I just don't think it's useful to plan our technology efforts around the organizing principle of making machines conscious. Instead, I think it's a lot more useful to think in terms of how to use machines to make people more effective. Or put another way, how to give ourselves superhuman powers. And viewed that way, this is just the next chapter in a very old story. We've been after superhuman physical powers since the dawn of man, first with stone tools and fire, domesticated animals and the wheel, and later with electricity and combustion engines. And now information technology is giving us superhuman mental powers, from spreadsheets to language translation to accessing a web full of information. This view of things goes back to Vannevar Bush and J.C.R. Licklider. But the real champion was Doug Engelbart at SRI, who said that our aim should be augmenting the human intellect and boosting mankind's capability for coping with complex, urgent problems. Remember, this is the man who invented the mouse and led the team that pioneered the graphical user interface, the internet, and hypertext. From the singularity point of view, machine intelligence is paramount, and interactive techniques play a secondary role. But from the Engelbart point of view, interaction is paramount. Artificial intelligence is still important, but primarily as a source of ways to augment interaction. The focus is on augmentation instead of automation. And that's why interactive techniques are so important. And more specifically, visual interaction is particularly important because vision is our strongest sense and the one that can deal with complexity the best, and that is our domain.